Yes, you're welcome to the program today. This is your welcome for peace and environmental justice. It is a NGO operating in Nigeria, in Africa, and it is a non-governmental organization that is concerned themselves with peace as well as environmental justice in Africa, as well as the entire world. Today, as you all know, we're looking at the effect of COVID-19 to the environment, as well as practical ways to sustain the degraded environment. And that is why we are here today. And like I earlier said, we are looking at three basic topics today that will help us to see how we can bring the environment back to its proper position. Like we know, the environment is for humans. And sad to say, it has been degraded by a lot of activities caused by humans, that of oil exploration, waste management, and a host of others. It is a 3 days program that we want to organize this week, today, by next week, we're going to handle on 3 topics, as well as the following Wednesday, the remaining 3 topics. But for today, we're going to look at oil exploration and its significant effect to the environment, as well as the resultant effect of the use of pesticides to the environment and human health, and that of the role of CSOs, NGOs, and IOCs in the remediation of the environment. And we have 3 persons that are going to take us through these topics, and they are fully prepared for that. We have somebody from the Nigeria Institute for Oceanography and Marine Research, Lagos, that is going to handle one of the topics, as well as somebody from the Micropollutant Research Center in Malaysia, and also the special assistant to the Delta State Governor is going to take us through the role of CSOs as well as NGOs in the remediation of the environment. So I want to say you're truly welcome to this program. So for us to kickstart, we want to look at, first we're looking at the CEPEJ itself, that is a Center for Peace and Environmental Justice, the role in providing assistance to the environment. As I want to look at the 2020 World Environment Day. Just give us a few time as we bring that on before we introduce Dr. Shaw from the Nigeria Institute for Oceanography and Marine Research, Lagos, that will discuss on the oil exploration and its significant effect to the environment.
The Center for Peace and Environmental Justice, CEPEJ, an environmental NGO in Nigeria with a vision to sustaining the environment from degradation, joined the entire world to celebrate this year's 2020 World Environment Day, tagged Biodiversity, Time for Nature. The branch office of the NGO in Abuja on June 4th, in collaboration with Federal Ministry of Environment FCT, Abuja Environmental Protection Board, National Rotation Agency, and Give Food Nigeria, commemorated the day at Berzin Community in Buari local government area of the FCT. The event featured the sensitization of residents on environmental management, tree planting, as well as the distribution of face masks, hand sanitizers, and food palliative to residents in the community. While CEPEJ Head Office located in Warri, Delta State on Friday, June 5th, in collaboration with Chief Vincent Oyibode, member representing Udu, Ogele South, and Warri Robles in the board of DESAPADEC, marked this year's World Environment Day in Ogio Community, Udu local government area of Delta State. CEPEJ Warri team celebrated the day with various activities that include public awareness on biodiversity as a means to protect and preserve the environment with concern to animals and plants. The team educated the community on preventive measures against COVID-19 spread in Delta State and planted economic and shade trees in the community primary and secondary schools, health center, and community entrance to mark its significance. In this contributory effort to further curb the spread of COVID-19 in Delta State, the National Coordinator of CEPEJ, Chief Comrade Sheriff Mulado, through the Warrior Office team, went around the community, sensitized and emphasized on the importance of staying safe amid COVID-19 pandemic. Distributed CEPEJ customers face masks, stickers, and flyers in solidarity to curb the spread of COVID-19. And this Dale Chief Vincent Oyibode, represented by his personal assistant, Mr. Kasoro Kelvin, thanked all those who were present to mark the day, stating that one way the community can protect the environment is to protect themselves from contracting the present global pandemic disease, COVID-19. While thanking CEPEJ for recognizing your community for marking this year's World Environment Day, an international event that the community has not witnessed for years, Chief Oyibode encouraged the community to develop the culture of tree planting as a means to protect the environment for healthy living. Those who joined the campaign and supported the program include members of the community executives, advisory council, elders, youth leaders, women, and children, amongst others, who were very glad that Ogio community was chosen by CEPEJ Warrior team to mark this year's 2020 World Environment Day. All of the people that we know, just give it up, they want to let it go. We will see you try today. So each knows how to share, it's never made to die. As long as what we see is tonight.
That is CEPEJ activity for the World Environment Day that was organized some time ago in this year. So you're welcome once more to the program. Well, we'll want to invite the National Coordinator to give us his opening speech before we go to the first topic of the day, and that's the person of Chief Comrade Sheriff Mulado. He's standing by to give us a speech. Okay, I've just been informed that the National Coordinator is not there yet. So I want to invite the Director of Program of CEPEJ to give the welcoming speech to all the participants as well as the speakers for the program. And that's the person of Nafisat. She is standing by to give us her opening speech. Mrs. Nafisat, please.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. At Center for Peace and Environmental Justice, our vision is to promote peace, good governance, justice, and the fundamental human rights of the marginalized populations while ensuring that the rest of us are able to pilot our economies in the best way possible. Today, we are looking at a core focal area for CEPEJ, which is the environment. So we have three focal areas: peace, justice and good governance, and the environment. And following from previous celebrations at the 6th June 5th for the International Environment Day, we decided to host a webinar to talk about issues that pertain to ensuring that we manage our environment in the best manner possible, especially because of our current reality, which is the COVID-19. We have like a very present topics of discussion today, and I'm looking forward to learning much more than what we have now to help us to be able to target our programs and beneficiaries better. Thank you very much. Over to you now, Mr. Dan.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Nafisat, for taking us through that and welcoming us to the program today. So we'll go straight to the best topic of the day, and that is oil exploration and significant effects to the environment. We have 10 minutes to give to Dr. Alicia Arusha. She's the director in the Nigeria Institute for Oceanography and Marine Research, Newman in Lagos. And she's standing by to give us to explain that topic to us. We want to give her our undivided attention as she takes us through that. Dr. Arusha, you're welcome, please.
Thank you very much. I'd like to share my screen. I'm told the host has disabled my screen. So if the host can please put it back on. Thank you. My screen is disabled by the host. My screen has been disabled. So please, thank you. Okay.
I think it has been taken care of right now. Just go through it now. That's been completed.
Yeah,
All right.
okay, thank you. Can you see?
Yes, we can.
We can see your screen very well. From the screen, I can read number 4, direct impact. Reduce sediment discharge to the shoreline.
Thank you. So,
all right.
Well, I want to thank you. Now, no, please, my first slide is the title slide. Can you see that? Please, I want to thank the organizers for having me on this very important initiative of the CEPEJ and then effect to the environment. Marine environment of Nigeria is richly with natural resources, which are both onshore and offshore. Nigeria's economy is heavily dependent on oil sector, and that is about 2% of its GDA. And oil production started in Ulubiri well, which is in the Bayelsa, and it started from 1956 by the Royal Dutch Shell, which discovered the crude oil in the Niger Delta. Production started in 1958. Today, we have more than 600 oil in the Niger Delta, of which 360 are onshore and 246 are near shore. That's the offshore. Nigeria is now the largest oil producer in Africa and the 6th largest in the world. Majority of oil and gas operations onshore is carried out in the Niger Delta and the neighboring morphological zones, which harbor extensive ecosystem. The vast onshore and nearshore environment has been exhausted almost by the OML and the OPL. So now Nigeria is thinking of the next phase of oil production. So that there is a claim given to the United Nations on the law of the sea, which is the UNCLOS, and when approval is gotten, then there will be more exploiting of the resources offshore. An offshore environment is such that we already have 200 nautical miles acceptance, so we have the right to carry out soil exploration around our 200 nautical miles. But now, Nigeria has enough evidence to claim that we can have extensive, of 150, because beyond 350, no country is allowed to exploit any resources there. So Nigeria is pushing towards 350 nautical miles, extended continental shelf. First of all, the marine environment has so many resources and opportunities. The fisheries, which has more than 20, the worth of the fisheries resources from shrimp exportation is almost $20 million. Then we have the mineral resources and then the non-mineral resources. For example, in the Niger Delta, the kaolin is a non-mineral resource, which is vast and can be used. Then we have recreational and tourism opportunities, water sports. The mangrove ecosystem in the Niger Delta is so beautiful that it can be compared with what you see when you go to the US in the Florida Keys. And when you go to Florida Keys, you have to pay an amount to be taken in a boat and going around the creeks and the river courses, which we have in Nigeria, but it's underutilized. Then we have transportation harbor, which we can develop further east, that is along the Niger Delta. Because along the Niger Delta, there is about more than 30 estuaries. And these estuaries, for example, the New Calabar and others, have beautiful sand, beautiful and natural waterways, upland that can be used for harbor construction. So the goods don't have to go from Lagos before getting to the Far East, or go from only Warri to get to the Far East, but also go from very close to Calabar River to go even north to the northeast. Biological diversity and communication cables, there are vast amount of resources, opportunities for exploiting that. So what is the biological diversity of the Niger Delta environment? Because that is the dominant area where oil exploration and exploitation is carried out. Biological diversity encompasses variety of biological life at more than one scale. It is not only the variety of species, both plant and animal, but also the variety of genes within those species and the variety of ecosystem which the species reside in. The biodiversity significance of the Niger Delta is high from regional to global perspective. I think that one of the highest conservative priorities in the whole of the West Coast, and it holds a large number of threatened and endangered species, particularly mammals that are economically, appealingly, and scientifically valuable. Oil exploration processes. Seismic lines have to be cut. Repeated seismic lines and surveys have to be carried out. And this expands the damage of the ecosystem, especially the mangroves. Then there is the dredging. This destroys the riverine system. And improper waste disposal in terms of the spoil, you know, it makes toxic accumulations when they are released. Construction of roads for carrying pipelines back and forth affect the hydrology of the mangrove system. Exploration, drilling, and plugging expands the size of the ecosystems that are destroyed. So let's look at the direct impact of oil exploitation on the environment. I want from 4 angles: the mangrove ecosystem, the biodiversity loss, the water discharge, and the sediment discharge. Now, the mangrove ecosystem, before the Olubiri well was discovered, before oil exploration and all that, and exploitation, that is before the 1960s, we had a pristine mangrove vegetation. And then they started exploiting oil, so they had to lay pipes, dredge, which you can see here. And then through this means, we have dissected mangrove vegetation. Now, the communities have to move in quickly because they have seen activities going on and they have to come and start selling products here and there. But then there are spores that are left on the banks. Initially, when these spores are left, you can plant some vegetables and do some few cropping, but after some time, it becomes too hard for that. So now we have illegal movement of oil processing, that is the small business people moving into the system. Now we have the whole lot of degradation of the ecosystem. Sorry. So what we have is biodiversity loss. Primates are lost, variety of plants, species are lost, there is so much lumbering, even the fisheries resources are also damaged because spawning of the juveniles are at the banks of the mangroves. And even all these activities, oil spills and the dredging and all that affects, you know, the enclave of the spawning grounds. Now, discharge of water to the shoreline. Naturally, we have water coming from the rivers, going through the mangrove ecosystems and flushing to the coastline. But what have we? When the dredging activities are carried out, when roads are carved here and there, it distorts the direct flow of sediments to the coastline. So the hydraulic nature of the water coming from the Niger Delta is disrupted. So we don't have water flowing freely to the coastline. And when that happens, we have all these cutting of oxbow lakes that leads to this is the formation of an oxbow lake that leads to the water to become stagnant. So sediments don't naturally flow. Water does not naturally flow to the coastal environment. So what we have is stagnation of nutrients going to the coastline to feed the mangrove that will have propagated towards the coastline. Sediment discharges also is disrupted because if spoils or if the channels are dredged and the spoils are put on the banks, then those sediments do not get to the shoreline. And when those sediments do not get to the shoreline, what happens? The mangrove vegetation does not grow to the shoreline, and we will now have an invasive species, which is the nimpa palm, taking the place of the mangrove vegetation. So you have the nimpa palm coming in front because they don't need so much nutrients coming from the north or from upland to the coastline. So they come to they are comfortable with taking the small nutrients from the sediments, but the mangroves have to be behind it. So we are now losing the mangrove vegetation slowly to an invasive species, which is the nimpa palm. Now, when we don't have enough sediment coming to the coastline, then we have shoreline erosion. The whole Escravos coastline, Forcados coastline, Kulama coastline, they all have serious erosion problems. The rate of erosion along the Niger Delta rim is between 15 and 20 meters per year. You have houses falling left and right of the shoreline, and that makes the whole environment unhealthy and unsightful. So, in conclusion, I'll say that in Nigeria, the development of the oil and gas sector is particularly important. The main backbone of the economy. Activities of this sector are usually accompanied by environmental degradation. The Millennium Ecosystem Assessment shows that human actions often leave irreversible losses in terms of diversity of life on Earth. And these losses have become more rapid in the past 40 years than before in human history in Nigeria. Development of other resource sectors which are equally profitable offers an alternative oil exploration for foreign exchange earning. Strong governmental institutions at all levels are essential to support the conservation of the environment for sustainable utilization and preservation of the ecosystem. National agreements need to include enforcement measures that will take account impacts on the biodiversity. And most direct action to halt or reduce environmental degradation need to be at local, state, or national level. Suitable laws and policies developed by the government, by the federal government, can enable state and local governments to provide incentives for sustainable resource management. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you so much, Dr. Olarunsho, for that explicit presentation. In fact, it is very, very exciting to hear you and presenting that aspect of our exploration activities, the effect of it to the environment. We want to say thank you very much for that. We truly appreciate your presentation. Well, we want to go to the next aspect of today's program. And this time we want to invite Dr. Wissam El Mahmoud. He is from Malaysia. He's with the Micropollutant Research Center of the University of Tuasin in Malaysia. He's going to take us through, well, there'll be time for questioning, and we have about 15 minutes for that. After the topics must have been addressed, we cannot bring that to our question. So we want to encourage everyone to put down their question anywhere it comes up. So Dr. Wissam is going to handle the resultant effect of the use of pesticides to the environment and human health. Dr. Wissam, you have our attention, please.
Yeah, hi.
Yes, you are home, please.
Yeah, good afternoon. So thank you so much for your invitation to be with you today on this forum, and thanks for the participants as well. So yeah, today I'm happy to be with you to share some points on the impacts of pesticides on the environment and human health. And as we know that the usage of the pesticides in the especially in the agriculture sector might cause a lot of environmental impacts, and also on the public health, pose some threats on the public health. So when we talk about the pesticides, the usage of the pesticides is to stop or limit the pest occurrence. And we have three types of pesticides. We have the insecticides, which kill the insects, herbicide, kill the weeds, and fungicide, suppress or kill the fungi. And when we talk about the benefits of the pesticides, so it's allow the agricultural producers to improve the quality, quantity, and diversity of our food supply. It's used in timber, turf, horticulture, aquatic, and structural pest control industries. The homeowners and home gardeners often use pesticides in their homes, yards, and open pits. What happens after the application, after the usage of the pesticides? When the pesticides are applied, the goal is that they will remain in the target area long enough to control the specific pests and then degrade it into harmless compounds without containing or contaminating the environment. Once applied, many pesticides are mobile in the environment, whether it is in the air media, soil, and water. This movement can be beneficial, moving the pesticides to target areas such as roots, but it can also reduce the effects on the target pests and injure the non-target plants and animals. And this is the dangerous part of applying the pesticides. So if we talk about the pathways of the pesticides movement, runoff, chemical degradation, volatilize or gas vapor, leaching and breakdown in soil, leaching and degradation of microbes, photodegradation, right? So these are the pathways of pesticides movement in the environment. So when we talk about the impacts of pesticides on the environment, over 98% of the sprayed insecticides and 95% of the herbicide reach a destination other than their target species because they are sprayed or spread across entire agriculture fields. So runoff can carry pesticides into aquatic environment, while wind can carry them to the other fields, grazing areas, human settlements, and undeveloped areas, potentially affecting other species. The other problems emerge from poor production, transport, and storage practices. Over time, repeated application increase pest resistance, while its effects on the other species can facilitate the pest resurgence. In terms of the impacts of pesticides on the human health, pesticides can cause short-term adverse health effects called acute effects as well as chronic adverse effects that can occur months or years after the exposure. Examples of those health impacts include stinging eyes, rashes, blisters, blindness, nausea, dizziness, diarrhea, and death. Examples of non-chronic effects are cancers, birth defects, reproductive harms, neurological and developmental toxicity, immune toxicity, and disruption of the endocrine system. Some people are more vulnerable than the others to the pesticides impacts. For example, infants and young children are known to be more susceptible to adults than adults to the toxic effects of pesticides. Farm workers and pesticides applicators are more vulnerable. Immediate health effects from pesticides exposure include irritation of the nose, throat, and skin, causing burning, stinging, and itching, as well as rashes and blisters, nausea, dizziness, and diarrhea. People with asthma may have very severe reactions to some pesticides, particularly the berthernine or bertheroid, organophosphate, and carbamate pesticides. So there are some factors that influence the pesticide's fate: properties of the pesticides, conditions where and when it applied, application methods. And in terms of properties of the pesticides, the vapor pressure, the volatility, the pesticides with a high vapor are more likely to change to a gas and escape into the atmosphere, and that convert the pesticides to a threat in the atmosphere. Sorption, attraction to soil surface, pesticides with the higher sorption values have reduced leaching. The water solubility or the dissolubility, more soluble pesticides have a lower sorption and more mobile in the environment as they are leached or moved with the runoff. The persistence, the amount of time pesticides remain in the environment measured by half-life. Pesticides with longer half-life poses a greater threat to the environment. The conditions where and when applied to maximize pesticides' effectiveness and minimize negative environmental impacts, the pesticides must be compatible with physical, chemical, and biological conditions of the application site. For pesticides used in crop or plant pest control, consider the following conditions. In terms of soil, we are talking about physical and chemical properties, the texture, amount of organic matters, and the pH. In terms of geology, the water table, larger distance actor, the surrounding waters, if there is a nearby water is more susceptible to contamination when pesticides are applied to highly erodible soil, over-irrigated or rain-soaked soils. Managing crop residues and maintaining grass waterways and filter strips help to protect surface water from sediments and pesticides pollution. The environmental condition, the heavy and or sustained rainfall or irrigation shortly after pesticides application can increase runoff, leaching, and volatilization. Soil temperature extremely high or low can interfere with the pesticides' performance. Pesticides generally become more volatile in high temperature and windy weather. And pesticides can be incorporated or applied directly into the soil to decrease the potential for drift and volatilization. When we talk about the application method, The challenge of pesticides applicator is to maximize the benefits of the pesticides through sound management while reducing the environmental risks. This includes keeping current of the latest information, taking all necessary preventive measures, including transportation, secure storage, proper disposal of containers, and receipt and spill prevention. Furthermore, avoid sensitive areas such as sinkholes, depressions, wells, surface water, public institutions, and private buildings. Product labels. The pesticides label is binding legal document. Compliance is required by the state and the federal regulations. Label direction must be carefully followed from purchase to container disposal. High-risk pesticides may only be purchased and applied by certified persons. The pesticides use careful selection for a specific pest, understand the pesticide product and risks, careful and responsible use. I think here, just to conclude, after talking about the threats from the pesticides on the environment and the health aspects, now there is a growing interest, research and development of products, which is more on the bio product, the bio kind of phytotoxicity, which will help to fight the pest with a bio, which will users and more safe for the public health as well, and that need to be developed, and more concern need to be, more attention need to be given to this field of research and development of those products. Thanks again for inviting me, and thank you much for your attention.
Dr. Wissam, we want to say thank you very, very much for taking us through that topic, the resultant effects of the use of pesticides to the environment as well as human health. We truly appreciate that, and it was a good delivery. We truly appreciate that part. I want to say thank you once more. What we are still expecting the speaker for the next topic, and that deals with the role of the CSOs, the NGOs, as well as IOC in the remediation of the environment. The person of activist Rex Anigoro is the special assistant to the Delta State Governor on civil society as well as civic engagement. Just unfortunate that we've not been able to get him right now. But notwithstanding, we want to go to the next of the Yes, we're sorry for that break in transmission. It was due to some network challenges we are having over here. But notwithstanding, what we're saying is that we'll be expecting the next speaker, and that is the person of activist Rex Anigoro. He's a senior special assistant to the Delta State Governor on civil society and civic engagement. He is supposed to speak on the role of CSOs, NGOs, and IOCs in the remediation of the environment. As to speak, it's unfortunate that we've not been able to get it right now. But notwithstanding, we can still go next on our agenda, that is question and answers. So if you have any question, you can please indicate your hand by using the raise hand feature so that we can identify you and direct your question to the speakers that have just spoken on the topic that we've just addressed. Anybody that you want to attend to your question. We've been able to attend to 2 topics today. That is the oil exploration and its significant effects to the environment. And that was handled by Dr. Olaronso. She is from Nigeria Institute for Oceanography and Marine Research, as well as Dr. Wissam, who handled the topic on the resultant effect of the use of pesticide to the environment and that of human health. And he's from Micropolitan Research Center, University of Utsin from Malaysia. So if you have any question, you can indicate your hand and the floor will be given to you to ask a question. Any question, please? You can use the raise hand feature to attend to that. But if there's no question, I have a question for Dr. Folorunsho. I
have a question.
Okay. My question. Okay, I can see Mrs. Nafisat.
I have a question. I've been raising my hand.
Ask a question, please.
Okay, my question is to Dr. Folorunsho and also to the second speaker. Relating their topics to COVID-19. So now we're looking at the effect of these things, oil exploration, as it affects the environment in these times of COVID-19, and also how use of pesticides affects the environment, especially in this time of COVID-19, because a lot of times we see that we're trying to disinfect our environment, we're trying to ensure that everywhere is clean, free of the virus before we go into a place or before we start using a location. So how does this use of pesticide relate with maybe use of other cleaning agents in this time of COVID-19? So I'm trying to see the correlation with their topics, basically. Thank you. So the question is for Dr. Folorunsho and the second speaker, correlating their topics to these times of COVID-19. Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Folorunsho, will you want to go first? Let's hear your response about that.
Okay, thank you very much for the question. During the pandemic, and then the rest we all had, I believe the environment also rested. And that is, activities were not as feverish as it was before, because feverish activities, spurs, worse for the environment. However, because people had to stay safe in their environment, the activities were not being carried out. However, people have resumed their activities because they have to make the financial gains they lost during the COVID pandemic. So maybe the environment rested, maybe there wasn't too much degradation, but it is now going tight. And unless, of course, there is another lockdown, the environment will still not rest. Every day, humans have to look for their daily means of survival, and it affects the environment. So unless, of course, the government set aside a time when the environment has to rejuvenate, that is when the environment will now have the opportunity to, recover. Other than that, waterways have been dislodged, sediments now in creeks for housing developments and all that. That will help the environment very much. Our mangroves going towards the shoreline into them. Our fisheries, the spawning area will not survive, because when the mangroves do not survive, they die, and no living organism can go near the dead mangrove vegetation. So we need a time when the environment has to rest. So during environment day, maybe nobody's supposed to do anything in the mangrove ecosystem or the swamps, then there will be rejuvenation. Thank you.
Hello. So, thanks for the question. As mentioned by Dr. Florencio about the correlation between COVID-19 and the environment and the lockdown, as we see a lot of change in the environment. We are talking about air quality, water quality. Maybe one aspect was that like of had more medical waste which need to be treated in so that we can prevent the spread. But we need to ask now whether this will be sustainable. Is it a sustainable approach to maintain the environment through the lockdown? Because the lockdown was for a certain period, we have improvement. Then later on, we resumed the activities and the pollutants been back into the scenario. So how we can sustain a good environment? We need to adopt a sustainable approach where we balance the economic needs with the environmental protection needs and taking into account the social justice element of the sustainable development. In that, we are kind of a developmental activity, economical development will take into consideration the environmental element. We need to conduct environmental impact assessment for each and every project to predict the potential impacts ahead of the project, mitigation measures for activity, and that will be the best way to maintain a good environmental quality. For those who think that this is economical burden, they are wrong, because if we are looking at the numbers, and we have a lot of scenarios globally, and if you are, I'm sure if you look at the local scenario as well, you will see the same trends. Now talking into figures, the worst scenario in economy, they predict that the global economical GDP will lose 8%, while a recent study stated that because of poor environmental health globally, we are losing 15% annually. We are almost losing the effect economical sector. While if you talk in numbers about the fatalities and victims, so now we are talking about almost 1 million people died because of COVID-19, while if you look at one aspect of the environmental challenges, we are losing 7 million people annually because of air pollution only. So that if you talk in terms of numbers about the environmental and health impacts, it is far beyond impacts because of COVID-19. If you talk about the we double back was predicted impacts of COVID-19 on the global GDP, and that is to act and to the sustainable development approaches and strategies in all aspects of our daily and local. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wissam, for your response, as well as Dr. Florencio for your response. I want to believe that that question was, it has been answered properly. Do any of us have other questions so that we can address those questions to them and they can give us their response?